Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the excellent Maven RS.4. Now, full disclosure on this optic is that they did send it out to me for free, so I did not pay for it whatsoever, so keep that in mind. Now, another company that I should mention is going to be Callaway Ballistics. They graciously supplied all of the 6.5 Creedmoor that you're going to see in this video, shot out to 1,000 yards. So, as a thank you, if you're in the market for anything from budget training ammunition all the way up to match loads, I've had great luck with their 6.5 Creedmoor and 5.56 match loads. Go ahead and check them out. Once again, that is Callaway Ballistics, and you can use code FOCUS to save yourself some money. Now, if you're not familiar with Maven, Maven is a DTC company. They're direct to consumer, meaning that they do not have any third-party distributors. They sell directly to the end user, so there is no markup between you and their products. This means that they can sell very high quality optics that are 100% made and sourced in Japan for reasonable prices. They don't sell cheap stuff, they don't sell inexpensive stuff, they sell very nice stuff at the lowest price that they can. Now, a couple months ago, I reviewed the Maven RS.1, which is their entry-level first focal plane scope. It's a fantastic, lightweight, very simple, 2.5 to 15, great glass, very limited features, capped turrets, no illuminated reticle, and it comes in at a price at $1,200. Well, actually they reduced the price to $1,000, making that scope even more attractive. The RS.4 is the top tier scope of their first focal plane line, coming in at $1,800, and it has every feature possible. Now, getting into the basics of the Maven RS.4, it is again 100% made in Japan with Japanese glass, and we'll get into that in just a minute. Now, the body is designed around a 34mm main tube, which is great. It's going to give you a bunch of advantages over a 30mm main tube, and this optic comes with a 56mm objective. Now, with that very large objective and tube size, this is not a lightweight optic. It's a little bit over 12 inches long and comes in at a weight of right at 1 kilogram. I think it's 1,004 grams or 35.4 ounces, so about 2.2 pounds sitting on top of your rifle, not including the mount. Now, getting into the turrets themselves, these are very large, oversized, tactical style turrets. I do want to mention that the machining work on them is fantastic. The main body has this fantastic knurling on them that is very similar to a power bar or a deadlifting bar. It really digs into your fingers, so it gives you a great amount of grip. On top of that, the rotations have a fantastic tactility to them, and they're also very audible as well, which is something that you want at this price point. Now, in terms of additional features, they also have a adjustable zero stop, and they are of course also zero resettable. On the left-hand side of the optic body, we have our parallax setting, which goes all the way down to 15 yards, which is fantastic for something like NRL 22, so you can make some very precise close range shots if needed. And of course, it goes all the way out to infinity. There's a good amount of force required to adjust your parallax. It's very smooth, again, feels very high quality, as you would hope for the price. Now, very interestingly, on the Maven RS.4, this is a illuminated reticle that has multiple colors, so you have green and red. I know back in the day, if you got a red dot off of eBay or any optic and it had multi-colors, that was a sign of it being something very cheap, very gimmicky, basically something relegated to airsoft. However, nowadays on the high end, if you have something that has multicolored reticles, you're usually spending several $1,000s on it. Now, on top of having both red and green, the illumination itself is very interesting, and I have no idea how they accomplished it. So on max brightness, you do have an offsetting between each of your 5 brightness settings for each of your colors, and on the top level, the center dot, the center floating dot in the center of the reticle, is the brightest part of the illumination, and it gets almost daylight bright, not quite, and it's also, because it's a first focal plane reticle, it's going to depend on what magnification you are, because of course if you're on a higher magnification, it's going to be bigger and therefore easier to see and easier to see the illumination on it. But the rest of the Christmas tree style reticle is almost about 30% as bright, so it's dimmer on the Christmas tree than it is on the center point. So it gives you a very hot floating dot, and then a little bit of illumination on the rest of your reticle for, dusk or low light shooting. It is almost like a dual illumination setting on top of course, having two colors as well. No idea how they accomplished it. It's fairly cool, but again, keep in mind it's still LED based illumination, so it's not going to be daylight, fire bright like a fiber optic illumination would be. It's still LED illumination. It's bright, it's interesting, it's unique, but still not truly daylight bright. Moving back to our magnification ring, we have a very smooth throw from 5 to 30. It is a 180-degree throw as well, and the entire magnification ring is covered in this, again, very aggressive knurling. It does have a raised nub on it, which could probably in theory be swapped out for a taller throw lever if needed, but with the very aggressive knurling, and usually you're not trying to swap super fast between say 5 and 30 like you would on an LPVO from 1 to 6, so it works quite well. And again, I believe they have aftermarket throw levers if you did want something a little bit bigger. Now, I'm definitely not a PRS style shooter. In fact, I'm quite a noob when it comes to shooting long range. However, the Maven RS.4 has every feature that I could possibly want for distance shooting. Now, getting into the usability aspect of the scope, this is another area where the RS.4 does fantastic. Getting into your eye relief and eye box, your eye relief at 5x, which is the bottom magnification on the RS.4, is very good. It's anywhere from 3 to about 5 inches is going to give you a very, very good image through the scope. The eye box is also very forgiving at 5x, which is your up, down, left, and right, meaning that it is a very easy optic to get behind at the low end. Now, of course, as you increase in magnification, the eye box and eye relief is going to get a little bit tighter. At the top end, which is again 30 magnification, which usually I wasn't using 30 magnification. Usually at the top end for 1,000 yards, I'd be at anywhere between 20 and 25. But at 30, it is certainly tight, not unusable, but it is certainly tight. You definitely need to be in a more stable position to take advantage of that higher magnification, because your eye box is going to be, maybe only a ½ inch up, down, left, and right, maybe even a little bit less than that. And your forward and back is also going to be very limited because, of course, you have that very high magnification. Even with that 56mm objective, you still don't have a very forgiving exit pupil at that top end of 30 magnification. Now, the field of view is also very good on the Maven RS.4. You have a 23.3 foot field of view at 100 yards at 5x magnification, which is roughly comparable to a 1XL PVO having something like 115 or 116 foot field of view, which again is in that very good category. Not quite top tier, but certainly very good. Now, the best thing about the Maven RS.4 is going to be the glass quality. Now, very nicely on the website, they give you the exact light transmission. They even give you the low light settings and a bunch of the other data on the actual wavelengths that it does well at, which is something that's far above my pay grade, and I'm not smart enough to understand that sort of thing. But to the naked eye, the glass quality is fantastic. That is something that I noted on the RS.1, and the RS.4 is also in that category of basically the second or third best scope that I've ever looked through. But keep in mind, the number one scope is still a $4,000 ZCO. So at less than half of that, the Maven RS.4 is somewhat of a bargain when you compare it with other high-end scopes that are gonna again cost anywhere between $3,000 and $7,000. But again, the glass quality is fantastic. Edge to edge looks great, no chromatic aberration, the clarity, the crispness that you can get even at extended ranges, even in low light scenarios. It's just a fantastic scope to use. Combine that with a very good field of view, a very good eye relief and eye box until you get up right up to that top end. It's a very usable scope with excellent glass quality. Now, getting into the reticle, this is the CFR-MIL. This is basically a MIL Christmas tree style reticle that ends up being essentially a 1x1 mil grid. With every 2 mils, you get your wind marks in, I believe, 0.2 mil increments. In terms of the information that you're getting in the reticle, it is very precise whether or not you wanted to dial or whether you wanted to hold over. If I didn't mention already, the center dot is, I believe, a floating 0.1, 0.2 mil dot, which is fantastically precise. And again, it has a floating dots, so there's nothing else around it cluttering up your image. So if you do want to dial and be very precise at 30 magnification, you can absolutely do that, and you can put that round exactly where you want it. Now it is of course a first focal plane optic, so the reticle is usable regardless of what magnification level you have to be at. So you don't have to be at 30x magnification to use the reticle. You can use it from anywhere from 5 to 29. And even at the low end, you can still make out your drops and your wind holds, which is a very difficult thing to do. So it retains a high level of usability at the low end while not sacrificing precision at the higher end, which is a very difficult thing to pull off with a first focal plane reticle. Now, usually this would be the point in the video where I test the optic's durability to see if it can maintain 0 after a sharp impact, but because I'm keeping this scope, I was just really scared and I didn't want to drop it. Just kidding, I dropped it onto the frozen tundra here in South Dakota, and I am very happy to say that even with the hodgepodge mounting system that I was using, it maintained 0 and did not have any issues whatsoever. Now on precision optics, I don't do the AR500 steel plate as it's not really realistic because there's not really a duty style optic. This is much more of a precision, maybe a hunting, but it's super heavy, PRS for sure. But again, it's not necessarily like a duty style scope. So an AR500 steel plate is probably not realistic to begin with, and definitely not for something like this. So for the precision rifle scopes that I test, I don't do the final drop, though this optic did hold up incredibly well through probably a couple thousand rounds at this point on 4 or 5 different guns. Now, getting into downsides, the biggest downside is going to be the biggest number, and that's going to be the weight. 35.4 ounces is heavy. So you put this on something that's already on the heavier side, say an AR-10, and you're very quickly looking at a 12 to 14 pound rifle, depending on what else you're putting on it. Weight is a major factor for anything that requires mobility, and there's no way to get away from it. It just is a heavy optic, so if you're going to be hiking with it, hunting with it, anything else like that, you definitely need to keep that in mind. Now for PRS guys, you don't even care because you guys are running around with 20-pound rifles to begin with, so weight does not bug you guys whatsoever. You guys are just trying to get the best follow-up shots possible, the least amount of recoil, the most stability, so weight for you guys is a good thing. Now the second downside is going to be price. There's no way to cut it. $1,800 is still a lot of money for an optic. However, if you're in the market for a high-end optic, $1,800 might sound like a bargain when you compare it to $3,000 to $7,000 optics. If you're in the mid-range, maybe you can try and stretch your budget up a little bit to try and get a few more features, a little bit more quality. But if you're like me on the low end of things, which this is probably 3 times more than the most expensive optic I've ever purchased, well, this is probably just out of your price range, unfortunately. But hopefully, like watching a video on a car you're never going to buy, hopefully at least it was entertaining. But again, at the end of the day, it is a fantastic optic to look through. The glass is great, it's very easy to use, great reticle, all the features you could ever want. It's going to come down to whether or not it fits in your budget. Again, for $1,800, value is very subjective at the high end, and you are not getting a 1-to-1 performance increase per dollar spent. So for instance, the difference between a $2,000 optic and a $7,000 optic might be only a couple percentage points one way or the other. So if this is something that you're interested in, go ahead and check it out. But with all of that out of the way, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. I will see you in the next one. God bless. Aw, last one. I think the wind died. the suppressor 7 mil down, take the suppressor off, 0.7 mil up. I can't believe I got that right. Impact.